3 feet above the brown water of the Rung Sat Special Zone, 30 miles southeast of Saigon. An armored troop carrier, call sign Tango 24, cuts through the mangrove channels at 12 knots, followed by 49 more boats carrying an entire brigade, and the Viet Cong spotters along the banks have no idea that industrial-scale amphibious assault has just entered the Mekong Delta. The Mobile Riverine Force concept emerged in 1966 from a simple observation. The Mekong Delta held more than 3,000 miles of navigable waterways, and the Viet Cong controlled most of them. Traditional ground sweeps bogged down in mud and ambush. Helicopter insertions burned fuel and exposed troops to ground fire during vulnerable hover phases. Rivers offered a third axis, one that combined armor, firepower, and troop capacity in a single platform. The U.S. Navy and Army began converting World War II-era landing craft into a floating combined arms task force, welding steel plate and mounting automatic weapons onto hulls designed for beach assaults. By late 1966, the first assault support patrol boats, monitors, and armored troop carriers began trials in the labyrinth of channels south of Saigon. Each armored troop carrier, or ATC, measured 56 feet long and displaced roughly 75 tons fully loaded. Welded bar armor and additional steel plating covered the hull and superstructure, rated to stop 12.7 millimeters rounds at ranges beyond 300 feet. The troop well, amidships, could hold 40 combat-loaded infantry, seated on benches or crouched below the gunwales. Armament varied by variant. Most carried twin 50 caliber mounts forward and aft. Some mounted a 20 millimeters Oerlikon cannon amidships. Crew consisted of a boat captain, engineman, and 3 gunners. Maximum speed approached 14 knots in open water, dropping to 8 in narrow channels, choked with vegetation. Range stood at approximately 150 miles before refueling, enough for a full day's operation within the Delta's river networks. Monitors provided the heavy fire support. These vessels carried a 40 millimeters cannon in a bow turret, an 81 millimeters mortar amidships, and multiple 50 caliber and 20 millimeters mounts along the rails. Their mission was suppression, laying down continuous fire to keep Viet Cong heads down while ATCs closed on insertion points. Command and Control Boats, or CCBs, hosted battalion and brigade staff, equipped with multiple radios, map tables, and observation platforms. Assault Support Patrol Boats, or ASPBs, served as escorts and scouts, armed with 20 millimeters cannon, grenade launchers, and 50 caliber machine guns, capable of 18 knots, and tasked with screening the column against ambush. Together, these platforms formed a self-contained amphibious brigade, able to move, fight, and sustain operations without reliance on fixed bases. The operational concept hinged on surprise and mass. A riverine task force could embark an entire infantry battalion, approximately 900 troops, along with command elements, artillery forward observers, and medical detachments, then move under cover of darkness or early morning fog to an objective dozens of miles away. The Viet Cong expected small patrols, sampans, or isolated outposts. They did not expect 50 armored boats carrying 3,000 soldiers to appear at dawn, disgorging infantry companies in coordinated waves, while monitors hammered tree lines with 40 millimeters high explosive rounds at cyclic rates up to 120 rounds per minute. Though sustained combat rates ran lower due to clip reloading, the shock effect alone disrupted enemy command and forced hasty withdrawals before prepared defenses could coalesce. Terrain shaped everything. The Mekong Delta consisted of alluvial plains crisscrossed by rivers, canals, and tidal creeks, with elevations rarely exceeding 10 feet above sea level. Rice paddies, mangrove swamps, and nipa palm thickets dominated the landscape. Dry ground existed in narrow strips, along riverbanks, and around villages built on low mounds. Movement off the water meant wading through knee-deep mud or chest-deep paddies under fire. The Viet Cong exploited this by positioning bunkers and spider holes along likely landing zones, covered by interlocking fields of fire. Riverine operations countered this by choosing insertion points based on intelligence and aerial reconnaissance, then overwhelming those points with concentrated firepower before troops stepped ashore. The boats themselves became mobile fortresses, suppressing enemy positions from the water, while infantry maneuvered inland. Weather imposed its own constraints. The monsoon season, from May through October, brought torrential rains and reduced visibility to hundreds of feet. Rivers swelled, currents accelerated, and navigation through narrow channels became treacherous. Dry season, from November through April, saw water levels drop, exposing sandbars and limiting access to smaller tributaries. Operations required constant adjustment. Deeper draft monitors sometimes could not follow ATCs into shallow zones, forcing commanders to rely on ASPBs and organic boat weapons. Tidal cycles in coastal areas added another variable, with some channels passable only during high tide windows lasting 2 to 3 hours. Mission planning integrated tide tables, weather forecasts, and hydrographic charts, synchronizing movement with the narrow windows when boats could reach objectives and extract before the water fell. The first major test came in January 1967 during Operation River Raider 1. Intelligence indicated a Viet Cong battalion operating in the Rung Sat Special Zone, a 50-square-mile expanse of mangrove swamp southeast of Saigon. Previous sweeps had failed to pin down the enemy, who melted into the swamps after brief contacts. The Mobile Riverine Force embarked 2 battalions of the 2nd Brigade, 9th Infantry Division, aboard 52 boats, including 14 ATCs, 6 monitors, 4 CCBs, and 28 ASPBs. The flotilla departed its base at Dong Tam at 3 a.m., navigating in column through channels marked only by crude stakes and local knowledge. By 5:30 a.m., the lead elements reached the designated insertion zone, a bend in the Soi Rap River, where aerial photos showed recent trail activity. At 5:45 a.m., the monitors opened fire. The crack of 40mm cannons split the pre-dawn silence, high explosive rounds walking along the tree line 200 feet from the riverbank. Tracers arced through the mist, detonating in orange flashes among the mangroves. Loaders fed clips as fast as gunners could traverse, the rhythm steady and mechanical. The 50 caliber mounts joined in, their heavy bullets shredding vegetation and suppressing any prepared positions. Then the ATCs nosed into the bank, ramps dropping into the mud, and infantry squads poured out in staggered files, moving inland under the umbrella of boat-based fire. Within 12 minutes, 6 companies were ashore, fanning out in a cordon while the boats repositioned to cover alternate extraction points. Viet Cong response came in scattered bursts. Small arms fire cracked from spider holes and concealed bunkers, forcing lead squads to go to ground. The enemy had expected a small patrol, perhaps a platoon-sized probe. Instead, they faced a brigade-sized assault with continuous fire support from the river. Monitors shifted fire to reported contact points, dropping 81mm mortar rounds with proximity fuses that airburst above the canopy, showering shrapnel downward. The Viet Cong battalion commander, realizing the scale of the incursion, ordered a fighting withdrawal deeper into the swamp, abandoning supply caches and prepared positions to avoid encirclement. By mid-morning, U.S. infantry had overrun 3 base camps, capturing documents, rice stores, and ammunition. But the Viet Cong adapted. Within weeks, they began mining likely insertion zones, planting command-detonated charges along riverbanks and in shallow water approaches. They positioned recoilless rifles and heavy machine guns in fortified bunkers set back from the waterline, beyond the effective range of boat-mounted weapons, but able to engage ATCs during the vulnerable moments when ramps dropped and troops disembarked. Ambushes became more sophisticated. with coordinated fire from multiple positions designed to isolate individual boats and inflict casualties before the flotilla could mass its firepower. The Riverine Force responded by varying insertion tactics, feinting toward one bank while landing on another, using smoke screens to obscure movement, and employing helicopter gunships to suppress tree lines before boats closed. Logistics defined operational tempo. Each boat carried fuel for approximately 150 miles of travel, but combat maneuvering, holding station against current, and high-speed runs consumed fuel at accelerated rates. Refueling barges accompanied major operations, anchored in secure areas where boats could rotate off-station, top off tanks, and replenish ammunition. A typical operation saw boats depart base at dawn, conduct insertions and fire support through midday, then either return to base or anchor in a defensive night position, forming a floating perimeter with interlocking fields of fire. Resupply helicopters brought in additional ammunition, medical supplies, and mail, landing on makeshift pads aboard the larger CCBs. The entire force functioned as a mobile firebase, self-sufficient for 72 hours before requiring major resupply. Communication presented constant challenges. Each boat carried at least one AN PRC-25 radio, with CCBs hosting multiple AN PRC-25 and later AN PRC-77 sets, operating under CEOI brevity codes and authentication procedures. Radio discipline often broke down under fire, with multiple stations transmitting simultaneously and jamming the net. The Viet Cong monitored U.S. frequencies, sometimes transmitting false commands or warnings to sow confusion. Riverine commanders developed additional brevity codes and authentication procedures, but the fog of war remained thick. Visual signals, flares, and colored smoke became essential backups. During one engagement in March 1967, a battalion commander aboard a CCB lost all radio contact due to equipment failure and resorted to directing the battle by signal flag and runner boats, a method that would have been familiar to naval officers a century earlier. Then came Operation Coronado 5 in September 1967, a multi-battalion sweep through the Cam Sun secret zone west of Mai Tho. Intelligence suggested a full Viet Cong regiment, perhaps 1,500 fighters, had concentrated in the area to threaten provincial capitals. The Mobile Riverine Force prepared its largest single operation. 3 battalions, nearly 2,700 troops, embarked aboard 61 boats. The plan called for simultaneous insertions at 3 points along the Mai Tho River, encircling the enemy and driving them into ARVN blocking positions. At 6 a.m. on September 15th, the flotilla surged toward the banks. Monitors laid down preparatory fires while ATCs raced at maximum speed through the morning haze. The Viet Cong had prepared. As the first ATCs nosed into the bank, command-detonated mines erupted beneath their hulls, blowing holes in the bar armor and flooding engine compartments. Recoilless rifle rounds slammed into boats, still in midstream, penetrating superstructures and igniting fuel tanks. Heavy machine gun fire raked the decks, killing gunners and boat captains. One ATC reportedly took a direct hit from a 75mm recoilless rifle. After-action reports describe the shaped charge warhead penetrating the bow and detonating inside the troop well. With 16 soldiers killed instantly, the flotilla staggered under the onslaught, boats veering out of formation, some grounding on sandbars in their haste to escape the kill zone. But the sheer mass of the force absorbed the shock and retaliated. Monitors that had held back now surged forward, their 40mm cannons hammering the tree line at point-blank range, less than 100 feet. ASPBs circled at high speed, their 20mm cannon and grenade launchers saturating suspected firing positions. Helicopter gunships, already on station, rolled in with rockets and minigun fire, suppressing the recoilless rifle teams. Infantry companies that had successfully landed maneuvered to flank the ambush positions, calling in artillery from fire support bases miles away. Within 30 minutes, The Viet Cong fire slackened, then ceased. The enemy withdrew, leaving behind destroyed bunkers and blood trails. U.S. casualties stood at 47 killed and over 100 wounded, the highest single-day loss for the Mobile Riverine Force. But the operation continued. A case study from that operation illustrates the system under maximum stress. At 7:15 a.m., ATC Tango 37, carrying a rifle platoon from Bravo Company, 3rd Battalion, 47th Infantry, took a recoilless rifle hit that killed the boat captain and disabled the steering. The boat began drifting downstream, out of the protective envelope of the flotilla. The engineman, a 22-year-old sailor from Ohio, took manual control of the engines, using differential throttle to steer the crippled vessel toward the far bank, away from the ambush. The platoon sergeant organized his troops to return fire with M16s and an M60 machine gun, suppressing a Viet Cong squad attempting to close on the boat. An ASPB call sign Alpha 12 broke formation and raced to intercept, positioning itself between Tango 37 and the enemy shore, its 20mm cannon firing continuously. A Navy Seawolf helicopter gunship arrived overhead, its door gunners adding minigun fire. Tango 37 grounded on a mud bank. The platoon disembarked under fire, established a perimeter, and held for 40 minutes until another ATC extracted them. The engineman received the Navy Cross, the platoon sergeant the Silver Star. The episode demonstrated that even when plans collapsed, the redundancy and firepower of the riverine system allowed units to fight their way out. Over the following months, the Mobile Riverine Force refined its doctrine. Pre-insertion fires increased in duration and intensity, with monitors expending up to 500 rounds of 40mm ammunition before troops landed. Engineers developed improvised float charges and grapnel sweeps, detonated ahead of the flotilla to trigger command-wired mines prematurely. ASPBs began carrying South Vietnamese scouts who knew local waterways and could identify likely ambush sites. Night operations became routine, with boats navigating by radar and infrared searchlights, inserting troops in darkness to achieve surprise. The Viet Cong, in turn, shifted to deeper sanctuaries, avoiding areas within easy reach of the rivers, but this conceded vast stretches of the delta to government control. From the Viet Cong perspective, the Riverine Force represented an unsolvable problem. A captured document from late 1967, translated by U.S. intelligence, described the dilemma. The enemy can concentrate an entire battalion on our positions within minutes, supported by heavy weapons we cannot match. When we prepare defenses, their firepower destroys them. When we avoid contact, they occupy our base areas and interdict our supply routes. We cannot win a direct engagement, yet we cannot allow them free movement. The document recommended avoiding contact with riverine forces, focusing instead on isolated outposts and ARVN units, a tacit admission that the Mobile Riverine Force had achieved tactical dominance in its operating area. The climax came during the Tet Offensive in late January and early February 1968. Viet Cong and North Vietnamese forces launched coordinated attacks across South Vietnam, striking cities and military installations in an attempt to spark a general uprising. In the Mekong Delta, enemy units besieged provincial capitals and district towns, many accessible only by water. The Mobile Riverine Force, operating from its base at Dong Town, became the primary reaction force, shuttling infantry battalions to threatened points and providing fire support during counterattacks. On January 31st, the flotilla embarked 2 battalions and raced 50 miles upriver to relieve the besieged city of Mai Tho, arriving at 2 p.m. After a 5-hour transit under sporadic fire from the banks. The boats formed a firing line along the waterfront, their combined armament creating a continuous roar that echoed through the city streets. Monitors anchored in the river hammered bunkers with 40mm rounds, while machine guns swept windows and rooftops. The volume of fire forced Viet Cong fighters to abandon prepared positions or be cut down where they stood. Infantry companies disembarked and fought block by block, supported by direct fire from the monitors. The Viet Cong, expecting to hold the city for days, found themselves caught between the Riverine Force and ARVN units counterattacking from the landward side. By nightfall, the city was secured. The flotilla remained on station for 3 days, rotating battalions ashore to clear remaining pockets of resistance and evacuate casualties. Similar actions occurred at Ben Tre, Vinh Long, and Can Tho. With the Mobile Riverine Force serving as a mobile fire brigade, its ability to rapidly deploy large forces proving decisive in blunting the offensive in the Delta. The technical innovation that made this possible was the integration of armor, firepower, and troop capacity on a single platform optimized for riverine environments. Traditional amphibious doctrine, derived from Pacific Island campaigns, emphasized speed and surprise, but assumed brief exposure during the ship-to-shore movement. Riverine operations required sustained presence under fire, with boats often remaining at the insertion point for hours to provide fire support and evacuation. The welded bar armor and steel plating absorbed punishment that would have sunk unarmored craft, while the heavy armament allowed boats to suppress enemy fire without waiting for external support. The result was a system that could operate independently, projecting combat power deep into contested territory, without reliance on airlift or ground lines of communication. One final engagement illustrated the system's maturity. In May 1968, during Operation Trong Cong Din, the Mobile Riverine Force conducted a night insertion, embarking a battalion at 10 p.m. and navigating 20 miles through unlit channels to reach the objective at 3 a.m. The boats used radar and infrared searchlights to navigate, maintaining radio silence to preserve surprise. At 3:15 a.m., monitors opened fire with pre-registered coordinates, their guns firing on azimuth and elevation data calculated hours earlier. ATCs landed troops in complete darkness, the infantry moving inland, guided by compass and pace count. By dawn, the battalion had established blocking positions around a suspected Viet Cong base camp. When daylight revealed the enemy attempting to withdraw, helicopter gunships and artillery completed the encirclement. The operation netted over 200 enemy casualties and substantial supply caches, achieved with minimal friendly losses because the enemy never detected the approach. The broader lesson extended beyond the Mekong Delta. The Mobile Riverine Force demonstrated that control of waterways could substitute for control of roads and airspace in certain environments. It validated the concept of combined arms integration at the tactical level, with infantry, armor, artillery, and naval gunfire coordinated by a single headquarters afloat. It proved that industrial capacity, the ability to build and sustain a large fleet of specialized craft, could offset enemy advantages in terrain knowledge and popular support. The Viet Cong never developed an effective counter to the Riverine Force because doing so would have required heavy weapons, fortifications, and logistics incompatible with their guerrilla strategy. They could ambush individual boats, inflict casualties, and force caution, but they could not prevent the flotilla from operating or deny the rivers as avenues of movement. By 1969, aggregate reporting tallied over 200 named operations, transported more than 150,000 troops, and engaged in over 1,000 firefights. The Mobile Riverine Force's area of operations, initially limited to a few provinces around Saigon, expanded to cover much of the Delta. The South Vietnamese Navy began forming its own riverine units, trained and equipped by U.S. advisors, part of the broader Vietnamization effort to transfer combat responsibilities. U.S. riverine units began standing down in 1969 and 1970, turning over boats and bases to their Vietnamese counterparts. The last U.S. riverine elements departed in 1971, leaving behind a doctrine, a fleet, and a legacy of operations that had reshaped the tactical landscape of the Delta. The final accounting showed that the Mobile Riverine Force had achieved its operational objectives. It denied the Viet Cong freedom of movement along major waterways, protected key population centers, and demonstrated that U.S. forces could adapt to the unique challenges of riverine warfare. The cost was measured in boats damaged and sunk, in sailors and soldiers killed and wounded, and in the relentless demands of maintaining a fleet in a tropical environment where rust, rot, and mechanical failure were constant enemies. But the concept proved sound. When the Viet Cong expected small patrols, they faced brigade-sized assaults. When they prepared ambushes, they encountered overwhelming firepower. When they sought sanctuary in the swamps, they found the rivers had become highways for an armored fleet that could deploy up to 3,000 troops in aggregated multi-battalion flotillas, a capability that redefined the war in the Mekong Delta. Stories like this remind us that war isn't just about dates and numbers. It's about people, the split-second decisions that shaped entire battles. Every flight, every firefight, every tactic is a piece of a massive puzzle where one order could decide the fate of hundreds. We bring back these forgotten moments to show that behind every report and archive page stood real men, pilots, scouts, engineers, soldiers, whose courage and ingenuity changed the course of war, even if their names were never written in textbooks. Tell us in the comments, what moment of the Vietnam War impressed you the most? Or what operation should we cover next? Your ideas keep these stories alive. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe. It helps us uncover more forgotten chapters where history lives through those who fought it.